Catherine Sinclair pressed the baby's head under the freezing water and held it there. 3 seconds? 4 seconds? 5? The 18-month-old girl thrashed her tiny brown fingers, clawing desperately at the copper rim. Catherine's face showed nothing. No panic, no maternal concern, just cold clinical observation like a scientist watching a lab rat struggle for air. When Marcus Thompson rounded the corner and saw his daughter's lips turning blue, saw his white wife's pale hands pushing down on that small, dark body, something inside him shattered. The scream that tore from his throat echoed across the estate. But Catherine simply looked up with those green eyes and smiled. Take a deep breath and settle in, because this story will stay with you long after it ends. If you're new here, subscribe to our channel and follow this journey to the very end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's begin. Marcus Thompson's hands were still shaking when he burst through the back door of his Buckhead mansion. He wasn't supposed to be home. New York? Snowstorm? Canceled flights. But something had pulled him back to Atlanta. A whisper he couldn't ignore. Now he knew why. Ruth? His voice cracked as he clutched both babies against his chest. Ruth, get down here now. The twins were ice cold. Their brown skin had turned ashy gray. Maya's eyes kept rolling back. Zoe whimpered weakly, too exhausted to cry. Ruth Jenkins appeared from the kitchen, took one look at the babies, and her face went pale. Lord Jesus, what happened to them? Catherine. Marcus could barely say the name. She had them outside, in a basin. The water was freezing. Ruth grabbed Maya from his arms, checking the baby's pulse, her temperature, her breathing. Her hands moved with the practiced efficiency of a woman who'd raised 3 generations of children. This child is hypothermic. We need Dr. Patterson, now. I'm calling him. No. Ruth's voice was steel. You hold these babies. Keep them warm. I'll call. She was already dialing before Marcus could respond. He sank onto the couch, both girls wrapped in his coat, their small bodies trembling against his chest. Behind him, the back door opened. Catherine walked in like nothing had happened. Her white wool coat was spotless, her blonde hair was perfectly arranged, her face wore an expression of mild concern, like someone watching a stranger's child throw a tantrum in a grocery store. Marcus, darling, you're overreacting. He didn't turn around. Get out. The water wasn't that cold. I was a pediatric nurse for 12 years. Cold exposure builds immunity. European parents do it all the time. If you'd just let me explain, I said get out. You're being irrational. This is exactly what happened with your first wife, isn't it? You panicked over every little thing until she couldn't breathe without you hovering over her. Maybe that's why Marcus was on his feet before he knew he'd moved. Ruth caught his arm, her grip surprisingly strong for a 70-year-old woman. The babies, Ruth said quietly. They need you calm. Marcus forced himself to breathe. His daughters were watching him with wide, frightened eyes. They'd never seen their father like this. They'd never heard him raise his voice. He sat back down, pulling them close. Leave this room, Catherine. Now, before I do something we'll both regret. Catherine's mask slipped for just a fraction of a second. Something cold flickered behind her eyes, something that didn't match the wounded wife performance she was giving. Then it was gone, replaced by tears. I can't believe you're treating me like this. I love those girls. I would never hurt them. You have to know that, Marcus. You have to. She reached for his shoulder. He flinched away like her touch was poison. Don't. Catherine's hand hung in the air for a moment. Then she lowered it, nodded slowly, and walked toward the stairs. Her footsteps were measured, controlled. Not the retreat of a devastated woman, but the tactical withdrawal of someone regrouping for the next attack. Ruth watched her go, her eyes narrowed. That woman, she muttered, is the devil in Dior. Ruth, I know, not now. She handed him a warm blanket from the nursery closet. Dr. Patterson will be here in 10 minutes. Keep those babies warm. I'll make some calls. What calls? Ruth didn't answer. She was already walking toward the kitchen, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice low and urgent. Marcus looked down at his daughters. Zoe had fallen asleep, her breathing finally steady. Maya was still awake, her dark eyes fixed on his face. Dada, she said softly. I'm here, baby. His voice broke. Daddy's right here. I'm not going anywhere. Dr. Patterson arrived in 8 minutes. He was a tall black man in his 60s with graying temples and glasses that always seemed to be sliding down his nose. He'd delivered the twins. He'd held Marcus's hand when Denise flatlined. He was the closest thing Marcus had to a father figure since his own dad passed. Let me see them, he said, already pulling out his stethoscope. He examined both girls thoroughly, his face growing darker with each passing minute. When he finished, he pulled Marcus into the hallway. "They're borderline hypothermic. Another 10 minutes in that water and we'd be looking at organ damage, maybe worse." Marcus leaned against the wall. His legs felt like water. "But they'll be okay." "Physically, yes, they'll recover within a few hours." Dr. Patterson paused. "Marcus, I have to ask, what happened?" "Catherine was bathing them outside, in a copper basin. She said it was some European immune-building technique." "That's not medicine, that's not even folk remedy, that's abuse." The word hung in the air between them. Abuse. Marcus had spent his whole life building something, building a company, building a fortune, building a family, and now in one afternoon he was watching it all crumble. "I don't know what to do," he admitted. "Yes, you do." Dr. Patterson put a hand on his shoulder. "You protect your daughters, whatever it takes, whatever it costs. Those girls lost their mother. They cannot lose their father, too." After the doctor left, Marcus sat in the nursery watching the twins sleep. Their color had returned. Their breathing was normal. They were going to be fine. This time. A soft knock at the door made him tense, but it was only Ruth carrying a tray with coffee and sandwiches. "You need to eat." "I'm not hungry." "I didn't ask if you were hungry. I said you need to eat." She set the tray down and lowered herself into the rocking chair across from him. "We need to talk about what comes next." "What do you mean?" "I mean that woman isn't going to stop. Whatever she's doing, whatever she's planning today was just a setback. She'll regroup. She'll try again." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Ruth's voice was hard. "I've been watching her for 6 months, Marcus. I've seen things, small things I couldn't prove, so I kept my mouth shut. But I'm done being quiet." Marcus looked up. "What things?" "The babies sleep too much. Have you noticed 18-month-olds should be running around getting into everything, driving everyone crazy, but Zoe and Maya just sleep all the time, and they're not developing right. They should be walking by now. They should be saying more words, but they're behind. Way behind." "The pediatrician said some babies develop slower." "The pediatrician doesn't live in this house. I do." Ruth leaned forward. "And I've noticed something else. Catherine insists on making all their food herself. Every bottle. Every meal. She won't let anyone else touch it. Not me, not anyone. She says it's because she's a nurse and she knows what they need. But I don't believe her anymore." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. He thought about how tired the girls always seemed, how listless, how their eyes sometimes went unfocused like they were seeing something far away. He'd asked Catherine about it once. She'd smiled and said it was a growth phase. Teething, normal baby stuff. And he'd believed her. "You think she's putting something in their food?" "I think something is very wrong in this house. And I think you need to start paying attention before it's too late." The door creaked. Both of them turned. Catherine stood in the doorway, her face tear-stained, her voice trembling. "I couldn't help but overhear. Ruth, how could you say such horrible things about me? I've tried so hard to be part of this family. I've given everything I have, and you're poisoning Marcus against me with these lies." Ruth stood up slowly. Despite being a foot shorter than Catherine, she somehow seemed to fill the entire room. "I've been in this family for 40 years. I raised Marcus from a boy. I held his mother when she died. I held his wife when she died. And I will hold those babies until my last breath. You've been here 6 months. Don't you dare talk to me about family." "Marcus." Catherine turned to him, her eyes pleading. "Please, you have to believe me. I would never hurt the girls. I love them like they're my own." "They're not your own," Marcus said quietly. I know they're Denise's children, but I love them anyway. I want to be a mother to them, a real mother. Please, just give me a chance to prove it." Marcus looked at her, at the tears streaming down her cheeks, at the way her hands were shaking, at the vulnerability in her eyes. 6 months ago, he would have taken her in his arms. He would have apologized for overreacting. He would have blamed Ruth for being overprotective, Angela for being prejudiced himself, for being paranoid. But something had changed today. When he'd seen his daughters in that basin, their lips turning blue, Catherine watching with that strange, calm expression, something had broken, and he didn't know if it could ever be fixed. "I need time," he said. "I need to think." "Of course," Catherine nodded quickly. "Whatever you need. I'll sleep in the guest room. I'll give you space. Just, please, don't give up on us. Please." She left, closing the door softly behind her. Ruth waited until the footsteps faded down the hallway. Then she turned to Marcus. "That woman is a liar. Every word out of her mouth is calculated. Every tear is manufactured. You can't trust her. I don't trust anyone right now. You should trust me. I've never lied to you in 40 years. Marcus rubbed his eyes. His head was pounding. His heart felt like it was being squeezed by a giant fist. What do you want me to do, Ruth? Throw her out. Call the police, file for divorce. Based on what? A cold bath. Based on your gut. Based on what you saw in her eyes today. You know something is wrong with that woman. You've known it from the beginning. You just didn't want to admit it because she's white and pretty and she made you feel less alone. The words hit like bullets because they were true. When Marcus had started dating Catherine, his whole family had objected. Angela said she was too smooth, too polished, too perfect. His mother's sister, Aunt Lucille, said there was something empty behind her eyes. Even Ruth, who rarely commented on Marcus's personal life, had pulled him aside and asked if he was sure. But Marcus had dismissed them all. He'd accused them of being prejudiced, of not wanting him to be happy, of seeing racism where there was only love. He'd been so determined to prove that he was evolved, progressive, beyond the narrow-minded suspicions of previous generations. He'd wanted to show the world that a black billionaire could marry a white woman without it being a scandal, without it being a statement, without it being anything other than two people in love. And in his desperation to prove that point, he'd ignored every warning sign. I need proof, he said finally. If I'm going to do anything, I need proof. Ruth nodded slowly. Then we'll get proof. How? I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. Tell me. Ruth reached into her pocket and pulled out a business card. She handed it to Marcus. The card was simple. White with black text, a name Jasmine Carter, a title certified nursing assistant, a phone number. Who is this? A young woman I know, smart, tough, grew up in foster care, worked her way through nursing school. She's got good instincts, and she owes me a favor. You want to bring a stranger into my house. I want to bring someone in who can watch Catherine without Catherine knowing she's being watched. You're too close to this, Marcus. You're too confused. You need fresh eyes. Someone who doesn't have any history with Catherine. Someone who can see the truth. Marcus looked at the card for a long moment. Then he looked at his daughters sleeping peacefully in their cribs. Make the call. Ruth nodded and pulled out her phone. She dialed the number and waited. Jasmine, it's Ruth Jenkins. That position we talked about. Are you still interested? A pause. Then, I'm interested. When do I start? Tomorrow morning. And Jasmine, I need you to do something for me. Watch everyone in that house. Trust no one, not even the man who signs your paychecks, especially not his wife. Another pause. Longer this time. I understand. Ruth hung up and turned to Marcus. She'll be here at 8. You really think this will work? I think it's our only chance. That night, Catherine lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up and read the message. Status report. She typed back, complications. Marcus saw the bath. He's suspicious. The response came immediately, how suspicious? He made me move to the guest room. Ruth is turning him against me. Then remove Ruth. I'm working on it, but he hired a new nanny today. Some girl Ruth recommended. A long pause. Then, this is getting messy. Maybe we should abort. Catherine's fingers tightened on the phone. No, we're too close. The insurance policies are in place. The will has been updated. We just need to be more careful. How much longer? 3 months, maybe less if I can accelerate the timeline. The creditors won't wait 3 months. Then find a way to buy us time. I'm not walking away from $45 million because of one setback. Another pause. Then, fine. But no more mistakes. If this falls apart, we both go to prison. It won't fall apart. I've done this before. I know what I'm doing. She deleted the messages and set the phone down. Then she got up and walked to the window. The nursery light was still on. She could see Marcus's silhouette through the curtains, sitting between the cribs watching over his daughters. Stupid man. He thought he could protect them. He thought love was enough. He didn't understand that in this world love was just a weakness to be exploited. Catherine had learned that lesson early. She'd learned it from her stepfather, who smiled at her mother while he crept into Catherine's room at night. She'd learned it from her first husband, who promised to love her forever and then cleaned out their bank accounts and disappeared. She'd learned it from Derek, who taught her that the only way to survive was to become the predator instead of the prey. She didn't hate Marcus. She didn't even hate his daughters. They were just obstacles. Numbers on a spreadsheet. Means to an end. In 3 months, maybe less, they would all be dead. A tragic house fire, perhaps. Or a car accident on a rainy night. Something clean. Something that couldn't be traced back to her. And Catherine would inherit everything. The house. The company. The $45 million life insurance policy that Marcus had signed just 2 months after their wedding, naming her as the sole beneficiary. She smiled and went back to bed. Tomorrow was a new day. New opportunities. New strategies. And Jasmine Carter was walking right into her web. The next morning, Marcus was in the nursery when the doorbell rang. He heard Ruth answer it, heard low voices in the foyer, and then footsteps coming up the stairs. Ruth appeared in the doorway with a young black woman behind her. She was tall and slender, maybe mid-20s, with natural hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her clothes were simple but clean. Her eyes were sharp, observant, taking in everything. "Mr. Thompson," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Jasmine Carter. Mrs. Jenkins called me about the nanny position." Marcus shook her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. "Ruth speaks highly of you." "Ruth is too kind. I'm just here to help with the babies." "It's more than that." Marcus glanced at Ruth, then back at Jasmine. "You should know what you're walking into. My wife. There was an incident yesterday. The twins were hurt. I need someone I can trust to watch over them." Jasmine's expression didn't change. "Mrs. Jenkins explained the situation." "And you still want the job?" "Mr. Thompson, I grew up in foster care. I've seen things that would make your blood curdle. I've seen kids neglected, abused, forgotten, by the people who are supposed to protect them. If there's even a chance that something is happening to your daughters, then yes. I want to be here, because every child deserves someone in their corner." Marcus studied her for a long moment. There was something in her eyes that reminded him of Denise. A fierce protectiveness, a refusal to look away from hard truths. "You're hired. 2-week trial period. If things work out, we'll make it permanent." "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." "I hope not. Those girls are all I have left." From the hallway, Catherine watched the exchange. She'd come upstairs to check on the twins to begin repairing her relationship with Marcus to continue the performance of the devoted stepmother, but she stopped when she saw Jasmine. There was something about the young woman that set off alarm bells, the way she looked around the nursery taking mental notes, the way she positioned herself between Marcus and the crib subtly protective, the way her eyes flickered to Catherine and held there assessing. This wasn't just a nanny, this was a threat. Catherine stepped into the room, her face arranged in a welcoming smile. "Good morning, everyone. I see we have a new addition to the family." Marcus didn't look at her. "Catherine, this is Jasmine. She'll be helping with the twins." "How wonderful." Catherine extended her hand. "Welcome to our home. I hope you'll be very happy here." Jasmine took her hand. The handshake lasted exactly 2 seconds, but in those 2 seconds, something passed between them. A recognition. A challenge. "I'm sure I will," Jasmine said. "I'm very good at my job." "I can see that." Catherine's smile didn't waver. "Well, I'll leave you all to get acquainted. I have some errands to run." She walked out her heels, clicking on the hardwood floor. But as she passed Ruth, she paused. "Can I speak with you for a moment in private?" Ruth followed her into the hallway. Catherine closed the nursery door and turned to face the older woman. "I know what you're doing," Catherine said quietly. "Bringing in this girl, trying to spy on me, turning Marcus against me." Ruth met her gaze without flinching. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. You've hated me from the moment I walked into this house, because I'm white, because I'm not Denise, because you're afraid of losing your place in this family." "My place in this family was secured 40 years before you showed up, and it'll be secure 40 years after you're gone." Catherine's mask slipped. For just a moment, Ruth saw what was underneath. Something cold, something vicious, something that made her take an involuntary step backward. "You've been in this house too long, Ruth. Maybe it's time for retirement." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm offering advice. From one woman to another." Catherine leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Bad things happen to people who get in my way. Ask the last housekeeper who tried to interfere with my plans." "What did you just say?" Catherine smiled. "Nothing, just thinking out loud." She walked away, leaving Ruth standing in the hallway, her heart pounding against her ribs. For the first time in 40 years, Ruth Jenkins was afraid. Inside the nursery, Jasmine was already at work. She fed the twins their morning bottles, changed their diapers, played with them on the floor. She sang silly songs and made funny faces that had them giggling. But underneath the games, she was watching, observing, analyzing. Something was wrong with these babies. She'd spent 4 years working with toddlers at the childcare center. She knew what healthy 18-month-olds looked like, and Zoe and Maya weren't it. They were lethargic, unfocused. Their motor skills were delayed. They slept too much and ate too little. Their eyes sometimes went vacant, staring at nothing like they were drugged. By noon, both girls were passed out in their cribs, sleeping so deeply that Jasmine had to check their breathing twice. She picked up one of the baby bottles Catherine had prepared that morning. Sniffed it. It smelled normal. Looked normal. But looks could be deceiving. Jasmine glanced toward the door. She could hear Catherine downstairs talking on the phone. Ruth was doing laundry. Marcus had left for a meeting. She was alone. Moving quickly, she poured a small amount of formula into a plastic bag from her purse, sealed it, tucked it into her pocket. Then she washed out the bottle and put it back exactly where she'd found it. Her grandmother's friend. Mr. Simmons at Union Pharmacy would know what to do with this sample. The back door opened. Footsteps approached. Jasmine grabbed a cloth and started wiping down the changing table, her heart hammering. Catherine appeared in the doorway. Working hard, I see. Just keeping things clean, ma'am. Please call me Catherine. She walked closer, her eyes scanning the room. How are the girls? Sleeping. They seem very tired. They're going through a growth phase. It's perfectly normal. Of course. Catherine picked up one of the baby bottles, turning it in her hands. Did you touch this? Jasmine's blood went cold. I was just cleaning up. They finished their bottles about an hour ago. Catherine set the bottle down. I'm very particular about the girls' nutrition. I prepare all their food myself. I hope you'll respect that. Of course, ma'am. I'm just here to help. Good. Catherine smiled, but her eyes remained flat. Because I'd hate to have to let you go so soon. Good nannies are hard to find. She left without waiting for a response. Jasmine stood perfectly still until she heard Catherine's footsteps fade down the stairs. Then she let out a long, shaky breath. That woman knew something. Maybe not exactly what Jasmine had done, but she suspected, and suspects meant danger. But Jasmine hadn't survived 18 years in the foster care system by backing down from danger. She'd survived by being smarter, tougher, and more determined than the people who wanted to hurt her, and she wasn't about to let some bottle-blonde predator hurt two innocent babies. That evening, after her shift ended, Jasmine drove to Union Pharmacy. Mr. Simmons was waiting for her, his white coat still on his reading glasses perched on his nose. Did you bring it? She handed him the plastic bag with the formula sample. I don't know what I'm looking for, but something's wrong with those babies. They're sleeping constantly. They're not developing. Their eyes go unfocused, like they're sedated. Mr. Simmons held the bag up to the light. Give me 48 hours. I'll run a full panel. Thank you. Jasmine? He caught her arm as she turned to leave. If you're right about this, you're in over your head. People who hurt children don't stop when they're caught. They escalate. I know. Do you have a plan A backup? Someone who knows where you are. Ruth knows, and I'm careful. Being careful isn't always enough. Then I'll be more than careful. I'll be invisible. She drove back toward the Thompson mansion, her mind racing. 48 hours. 2 days to keep those babies safe while she waited for proof. She could do this. She had to do this, because no one else was going to. Marcus was waiting for her when she arrived. He was standing on the front porch, his arms crossed, his face troubled. We need to talk. Jasmine's stomach clenched. Did something happen? I got a call from my sister Angela. She's flying in tomorrow. She wants to meet you. Why? Because I told her about you, about what you're doing here, and she wants to help. Jasmine relaxed slightly. Okay, that's good, right? More people watching? That's what I thought, but then Catherine found out. She's not happy. I imagine she wouldn't be. Marcus rubbed his eyes. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. Jasmine, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think I'm crazy? Ruth thinks Catherine is dangerous. Angela thinks Catherine is dangerous. Now you're here watching her like a hawk. But 6 months ago, I married this woman. I stood in front of our families and promised to love her forever. Was I wrong? Was I completely blind? Jasmine was quiet for a moment. She thought about all the foster parents she'd had. The ones who seemed so kind at first, so welcoming. The ones who showed their true colors only after the social workers stopped visiting. Mr. Thompson, some people are very good at pretending. They know exactly what to say, exactly how to act, exactly which buttons to push. It's not your fault for believing her. It's her fault for lying. But I should have seen it. The signs were there. My family tried to warn me. Grief does strange things to people. It makes us desperate for connection. Makes us see what we want to see instead of what's really there. She paused. The important thing is what you do now. Now that your eyes are open, Marcus nodded slowly. Thank you for being honest. That's what you're paying me for. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I'm paying you to watch my daughters. Same thing? Inside the house, Ruth was putting the twins to bed, and in the guest room, Catherine sat in darkness, her phone pressed to her ear. We have a problem. The voice on the other end was harsh, impatient. Another one. Marcus's sister is coming, Angela Thompson. She's a lawyer. She's been suspicious of me from the start. Can you handle her? I don't know. She's smart, aggressive, and now she's bringing in this nanny as some kind of spy. They're building a case against me. A long silence. Then? Maybe we need to accelerate the timeline. How much faster? The babies first, then the father. Make it look connected. A family tragedy, something with the house, carbon monoxide maybe, or a fire. Catherine's hand tightened on the phone. That's risky. Too many variables. Less risky than waiting for them to figure out what we've been doing. You've been dosing those kids for 3 months. Eventually someone's going to notice. Eventually they're going to do blood tests, and when they do... I know. Then move faster. Get it done. Or I'll find someone who can. The line went dead. Catherine sat in the darkness for a long time, thinking, planning, calculating. She'd killed before. The first time was hard. The second time was easier. By the third, she'd stopped feeling anything at all. But this was different. This wasn't some lonely old man with no family to ask questions. This was Marcus Thompson. Billionaire. Philanthropist. Connected to every powerful person in Atlanta. His death would make headlines. His death would be investigated. She had to be perfect. No mistakes. No loose ends. And that meant dealing with the threats. One by one. Ruth first. The old woman knew too much. Suspected too much. An accident, maybe. A fall down the stairs. Tragic but believable for someone her age. Then Jasmine. The nanny who asked too many questions. A car accident. A mugging gone wrong. Atlanta was a big city. These things happened. Then Angela. The sister who never trusted her. Trickier but not impossible. Lawyers made enemies. Enemies sometimes acted on grudges. And finally Marcus and the twins. Together. A family tragedy that would make the evening news. She'd be the grieving widow too devastated to speak, too heartbroken to answer questions. 6 months of mourning. Then the inheritance. $45 million. Freedom. A new life somewhere far away with Derek where no one would ever find them. It was a good plan. A solid plan. She just had to execute it perfectly. Catherine smiled in the darkness and closed her eyes. Tomorrow the real work would begin. In the nursery, the twins slept peacefully, their small chests rising and falling in rhythm. They didn't know that their stepmother was planning their deaths. They didn't know that their father was drowning in doubt. They didn't know that a young woman from the foster care system was their best hope for survival. They just slept dreaming whatever babies dream about, innocent and unaware of the darkness gathering around them. And somewhere in the city, in a cramped apartment above a dry cleaner, Jasmine Carter lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She thought about the babies, about their vacant eyes, about the way they slept too much and moved too little. She thought about Catherine, about the coldness behind her smile, about the threat hidden beneath her sweet words. She thought about her own childhood, about the foster mother who locked her in a closet for days, about the foster father who used his belt for discipline, about the system that failed her again and again. She'd promised herself when she finally aged out at 18 that she would spend her life protecting the children who couldn't protect themselves, that she would be the advocate she never had, that she would stand between vulnerable kids and the adults who wanted to hurt them. And now here she was, in a mansion full of secrets, facing a predator who had already marked her as a target. She wasn't afraid. Fear was a luxury she'd never been able to afford. But she was angry. A cold, controlled anger that burned in her chest like a pilot light, always on, always ready to ignite. Those babies were going to survive. Whatever it took, whatever it cost. Jasmine Carter had made a promise to herself, and she never broke her promises. She closed her eyes and waited for the dawn. The war was just beginning. 48 hours felt like 48 years. Jasmine arrived at the Thompson mansion at exactly 7 the next morning, her mind still racing from the sleepless night. She'd barely stepped through the front door when Ruth grabbed her arm and pulled her into the kitchen. "She's watching you," Ruth whispered. "She asked me 3 times last night where you came from, who recommended you, whether you had any family in Atlanta." "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that you're a nursing assistant from the child care center, that I've known your grandmother for 30 years, that you're just here to help with the babies." "Did she believe you?" Ruth's face was grim. That woman doesn't believe anything. She just collects information, stores it, waits for the right moment to use it. Jasmine nodded slowly. Then I'll give her nothing to use. She spent the morning with the twins, feeding them, playing with them, watching for any signs of distress. Both girls seemed slightly more alert today, their eyes tracking movement, their hands reaching for toys. Maybe Catherine had eased up on whatever she was giving them. Maybe she was being more careful now that she was under scrutiny. Or maybe she was just waiting. At 10:15, the doorbell rang. Ruth answered it, and a moment later, Jasmine heard voices in the foyer. One was Marcus. The other was female sharp and authoritative. Angela Thompson swept into the nursery like a force of nature. She was tall, with flawless dark skin and designer clothes that probably cost more than Jasmine's monthly rent. But her eyes were kind, and when she looked at the twins, her whole face softened. "There are my babies," she cooed, scooping up Maya and covering her face with kisses. "Auntie Angela missed you so much. Yes, she did. Yes, she did." Maya giggled and grabbed a fistful of Angela's perfectly styled hair. Marcus appeared in the doorway. "Angela, this is Jasmine Carter, the nanny I told you about." Angela turned, still holding Maya. Her eyes swept over Jasmine, assessing, calculating. Then she smiled. "Ruth says you're one of the good ones. Ruth is never wrong about people." "I try to be, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am. Makes me feel old." Angela handed Maya back to Jasmine and lowered her voice. "My brother told me what happened. The cold water, the way Catherine acted. I want you to know that I've had a bad feeling about that woman since the day Marcus introduced her." "You and Mrs. Jenkins both." "Ruth has good instincts. So do I. The question is whether my brother will listen before it's too late." Angela glanced toward the door. "Where is she, Catherine?" "I haven't seen her this morning. She's been staying in the guest room." "Hiding, regrouping, planning her next move?" Angela's jaw tightened. "I've dealt with predators like her before. In the courtroom, in the boardroom. They're all the same. Charming on the surface, rotting underneath. The trick is to catch them before they can do real damage." "And if the damage is already done," Angela looked at the twins, at their slightly vacant eyes, at the way they moved just a little too slowly. "Then we document everything, build a case, and we make sure she pays." At 11:30, Catherine finally emerged from her room. She'd clearly spent the morning preparing for battle. Her makeup was flawless, her clothes were elegant, her smile was warm and welcoming as she descended the stairs. "Angela?" "What a wonderful surprise. Marcus didn't tell me you were coming." "I'm sure he didn't." Angela didn't return the smile. "I wanted to see my nieces, make sure they're being properly cared for." "Of course they are. I love those girls like they're my own." "So I've heard. Over and over. Almost like you're trying to convince yourself." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Catherine's smile flickered just for a second. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do." Angela stepped closer. "I'm a lawyer, Catherine. I read people for a living. And right now I'm reading you like an open book." "Then you must be misreading, because I have nothing to hide." "Everyone has something to hide. The question is what yours will cost my brother when it finally comes out." Catherine's eyes went flat. "I think you should leave." "I think I'll stay. My brother invited me. This is his house, and those are his children, not yours." Marcus stepped between them. "That's enough. Both of you." "Marcus, she's attacking me in my own home. After everything I've done for this family." "I said enough." His voice was hard. "Angela, you're welcome here, but I won't have you provoking my wife. Catherine, you need to understand that my family has concerns. Legitimate concerns. After what happened with the twins." "What happened was an accident. A misunderstanding. How many times do I have to explain that? Until we believe you." Catherine stared at him. Something shifted in her expression. A crack in the facade. Then she composed herself, pressing a hand to her forehead. "I have a migraine. I'm going to lie down. When you're all ready to treat me like a human being instead of a criminal, you know where to find me." She walked away, her heels clicking on the floor, but not before shooting Angela a look of pure venom. Angela watched her go, then turned to Marcus. "She's good, I'll give her that, but she's not good enough." "What do you mean?" "I mean that I've spent 15 years cross-examining witnesses. I know when someone is lying, and that woman hasn't told the truth since the day she walked into your life." At 1:45, while the twins were napping, Jasmine's phone buzzed. She stepped into the bathroom and checked the message. It was from Mr. Simmons at the pharmacy. "Results are in. Call me. Urgent." Her hands were shaking as she dialed his number. He answered on the first ring. "Jasmine, the formula you brought me. I found something." "What?" "Phenobarbital. It's a barbiturate sedative, used for seizures, sometimes for anxiety, but never, and I mean never, for infants. The dosage I detected would be enough to sedate an adult. For an 18-month-old baby given repeatedly over time, it could cause developmental delays, respiratory depression, even organ damage." Jasmine leaned against the bathroom wall. Her legs felt weak. "Are you sure?" "I ran the test 3 times. I'm sure." "What do I do now?" "You need to tell the father, and you need to call the police. This isn't just abuse anymore. This is attempted murder." After she hung up, Jasmine stood in the bathroom for a long moment, trying to slow her racing heart. She had proof now. Real, undeniable proof. But she also had a problem. Catherine was still in this house. Still had access to the twins. If Jasmine went to Marcus or the police, Catherine would know immediately. And a cornered predator was the most dangerous kind. She needed to be smart about this. Strategic. She stepped out of the bathroom and nearly collided with Catherine. Making personal calls on company time. Catherine's voice was sweet, but her eyes were ice. "Just checking in with a friend. She's been sick." "How thoughtful of you." Catherine didn't move. She was blocking the hallway, her body positioned so that Jasmine couldn't pass. "You know I've been thinking about you, Jasmine, about where you came from, about why you're really here." "I'm here to take care of the twins." "Are you?" "Because it seems to me like you're here to spy on me, to report back to Ruth, to Angela, to everyone who wants to destroy my marriage." "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." Catherine stepped closer. Close enough that Jasmine could smell her perfume, close enough to see the cold calculation behind her smile. "Let me give you some advice from one woman to another. This is not a fight you want to pick. I have resources you can't imagine, connections you don't want to know about. If you try to take me down, I will destroy you, your career, your reputation, your life. Everything you've worked for will disappear, and no one will believe a word you say." Jasmine held her ground. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm educating you. There's a difference." Catherine reached up and brushed a piece of lint from Jasmine's shoulder. The gesture was almost maternal, but her eyes were predatory. "I know you took something from the kitchen yesterday, a sample of the formula. Did you think I wouldn't notice?" Jasmine's blood went cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't." Catherine smiled. "But here's the thing about evidence. It can disappear. Samples can be contaminated. Witnesses can be discredited. And young women from the foster system with no family to protect them and no money to fight back tend to have very short memories when they realize what they're up against." "You're insane." "I'm pragmatic. There's a difference." Catherine stepped aside, finally clearing the hallway. "Now get back to work. Those babies won't feed themselves." Jasmine walked past her, her heart hammering so hard she was sure Catherine could hear it. When she reached the nursery, she closed the door and leaned against it, gasping for air. Catherine knew. She knew about the sample. She knew Jasmine was investigating, and she wasn't even trying to hide it, which meant one of two things. Either Catherine was confident that Jasmine couldn't touch her, or Catherine was planning to eliminate the threat before Jasmine could act. Neither option was good. At 4:20, Ruth found Jasmine in the nursery rocking Maya while Zoe played with blocks on the floor. "You look pale. What happened?" Jasmine told her everything, the phone call from Mr. Simmons, the confrontation with Catherine, the threat. Ruth listened in silence, her face growing darker with each word. When Jasmine finished, Ruth sat down heavily in the rocking chair. "Phenobarbital? My God, she's been drugging them this whole time." "We need to tell Marcus, today, before Catherine makes her next move." "Agreed. But we need to be careful. If we push too hard too fast, Catherine might do something desperate. She's already feeling cornered." "What do you suggest?" "We wait until Angela can be there too. She's a lawyer. She knows how to present evidence, how to make a case. If we go to Marcus together with the pharmacy report and everything we've seen, he'll have no choice but to believe us. And what about Catherine? We keep her away from those babies, no matter what." At 6:15, Marcus came home from work. Angela was waiting for him in the study along with Ruth and Jasmine. The twins were asleep upstairs with a baby monitor on the desk. "What's going on?" Marcus looked at their faces. "Why do you all look like someone died?" Angela closed the door. "Sit down, Marcus. We need to talk." "If this is about Catherine again..." "It's about your daughters. Sit down." He sat. Jasmine handed him the pharmacy report. She explained what Mr. Simmons had found. The phenobarbital, the dosages, the effects on developing brains. Marcus read the report in silence. His hands began to shake. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "You're telling me my wife has been drugging my children?" "Yes." "For how long?" "We don't know, but based on the girl's symptoms, it could be months, since before you married her, maybe." Marcus put the report down. He pressed his hands to his face. His shoulders began to shake. Angela knelt beside him. "Marcus, I know this is hard, but we need to act. Tonight. We need to get Catherine out of this house and call the police." "I trusted her." His voice was muffled behind his hands. "I brought her into my home. I let her touch my daughters. I slept next to her every night while she was poisoning my babies. You didn't know. None of us knew for certain until now. I should have known. Everyone tried to tell me. You tried to tell me. Ruth tried to tell me. Even Mama, before she passed, said something wasn't right, but I didn't listen because I was so desperate to not be alone." Ruth walked over and put a hand on his shoulder. "What's done is done. The question now is what you're going to do about it." Marcus lowered his hands. His eyes were red, but his jaw was set. "I'm going to confront her, right now, and then I'm going to call the police." "Marcus, wait." Angela grabbed his arm. "You can't just go charging in there. She's dangerous. We need a plan." "She's been poisoning my daughters. The plan is to get her away from them, permanently." He stood up and walked toward the door. "Marcus." Angela called after him, but he was already gone. At 6:42, Marcus threw open the door to the guest room. Catherine was sitting at the vanity applying lipstick. She looked up at him in the mirror, her expression calm. "Darling, is something wrong?" Marcus held up the pharmacy report. "I know what you've been doing." Catherine's hand paused, just for a second. Then she continued applying her lipstick. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Phenobarbital. You've been putting it in their formula, sedating my daughters, making them sick, and I have proof." Catherine set down the lipstick and turned to face him. Her expression was still calm, but something had changed in her eyes, something cold and calculating. "That report is meaningless. Your little spy contaminated the sample. Anyone could see that. The pharmacy is reputable. The results are accurate. The pharmacy is run by a friend of your housekeeper, hardly an unbiased source." Catherine stood up and walked toward him. "Marcus, think about what you're saying. Think about what you're accusing me of. I'm your wife. I love you. I would never hurt those children." "Then explain the drugs." "There are no drugs. That report is a fabrication. Ruth has been trying to get rid of me since the day I arrived. She never accepted me because I'm not Denise. She never accepted me because I'm white. And now she's recruited that nanny and your sister to help her destroy our marriage." "This isn't about Ruth. But Ruth, this is about my daughters." "Your daughters are fine. They're healthy. They're happy. They're developing normally. Ask any pediatrician." "Dr. Patterson said they're delayed." "Dr. Patterson is 70 years old and set in his ways. Modern children develop at different rates. There's nothing wrong with Zoe and Maya except the stress of living in a house full of people who hate their stepmother." Marcus stared at her. Even now, faced with evidence, she wouldn't admit anything. She was still spinning, still manipulating, still trying to make him doubt his own eyes. "I want you out of this house," he said quietly. "Tonight?" Catherine's mask finally cracked. "You can't be serious. Pack your things. You have 1 hour. After that, I'm calling the police." "The police?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "On what charges? You have a questionable pharmacy report and the word of a nanny with a juvenile record. No prosecutor in this country would touch that case. Maybe not, but I can still divorce you, and I can make sure you never see those girls again. You would do that to me after everything I've sacrificed for this family." "What have you sacrificed? Name one thing." Catherine's eyes went hard. "My dignity, my pride, my self-respect. Every day in this house surrounded by people who look at me like I'm trash. Your sister, your housekeeper, even your dead wife's portrait. Watching me from every wall. Do you know what it's like to compete with a ghost, Marcus? Do you have any idea how hard I've tried to measure up? Is that why you did it? You were jealous of Denise. I'm not jealous of anyone, least of all a woman who's been dead for 2 years. Then why drug my children? What could you possibly gain?" Catherine smiled. It was the coldest smile Marcus had ever seen. "You really want to know, Yes. Then you should check your life insurance policy, the one you signed 2 months after our wedding, the one that names me as the sole beneficiary." Marcus felt the floor shift beneath his feet. "What?" $45 million, Marcus. That's what your life is worth to the insurance company, and the twins' lives are worth another $5 million each, $55 million total. more than enough to start over somewhere far away. You were going to kill us. I was going to survive. There's a difference. Catherine walked to the closet and pulled out a small suitcase. You want me gone? Fine, I'll go, but you should know that this isn't over. I have resources, connections, and I have a partner who doesn't take kindly to being cheated out of his share. Partner? Catherine pulled a phone from her pocket and held it up. Say hello to Derek Marcus, my husband, my real husband, the man I've been married to for 12 years while I was pretending to be your grieving widow. She pressed a button and a man's voice filled the room. Is there a problem? Change of plans, Catherine said. Covers blown, time for extraction. What about the money? There's another way. There's always another way. She ended the call and looked at Marcus. You have about 30 minutes before Derek gets here. I suggest you use that time wisely. You're not going anywhere. Marcus moved to block the door. Oh, Marcus. Catherine shook her head sadly. You still don't understand. You were never in control, not for a single moment. She reached into her purse and pulled out a gun. Marcus froze. Now step aside, Catherine said calmly, or I'll put a bullet in your chest and tell the police you attacked me. Who do you think they'll believe? The grieving widow defending herself, or the angry black man with a history of paranoid accusations? Marcus didn't move. Catherine raised the gun. I said step aside. The door flew open behind Marcus. Angela stood in the doorway, her phone held high. I've been recording this whole conversation, she said. Your confession, the insurance fraud, the threats, all of it. And I've already sent copies to my office to the Atlanta PD and to every major news outlet in the state. Catherine's face went white. You're lying. Try me. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Catherine lowered the gun. This isn't over, she said. Not by a long shot. She pushed past Marcus and Angela, running down the stairs. They heard the front door open, heard a car engine start, heard tires screech on the driveway. Then silence. Marcus leaned against the wall, his legs giving out. Angela caught him before he could fall. She's gone, Angela said. It's over. It's not over. Marcus shook his head. She has a partner, Derek. He's coming. Then we need to call the police. Now. At 7:28, 3 Atlanta PD cruisers pulled into the Thompson driveway. Officers secured the perimeter, while Detective Williams took statements from Marcus, Angela Ruth, and Jasmine. At 7:45, an APB was issued for Catherine Sinclair and Derek Sinclair, wanted for attempted murder insurance fraud and child endangerment. At 8:15, Dr. Patterson arrived to examine the twins. He drew blood samples for a full toxicology panel and recommended that both girls be hospitalized for observation. At 8:32, Marcus sat in the back of an ambulance with his daughters in his arms, watching the police search his home for evidence. Angela climbed in beside him. The news crews are here, CNN Fox local affiliates. This is going to be everywhere by morning. Let them report it. I want the whole world to know what she did. Are you sure the publicity? I don't care about publicity. I care about my daughters, and I care about making sure Catherine Sinclair never hurts another child again. At 9:15, the ambulance pulled away from the mansion carrying Marcus and the twins to Grady Memorial Hospital. Behind them, the house they'd called home stood empty and violated its secrets, exposed its shadows, finally illuminated. And somewhere on a dark highway heading north, Catherine Sinclair gripped the steering wheel and stared at Fritz the road ahead, her mind already racing toward the next scheme, the next target, the next victim. She would find Derek. She would regroup. She would plan. And she would make Marcus Thompson pay for what he'd done. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. At the hospital, nurses and doctors swarmed around the twins, running tests, checking vitals, asking questions that Marcus answered in a daze. Angela handled the paperwork. Ruth sat in the corner praying quietly. Jasmine stood by the window, watching the city lights, thinking about everything that had happened in the past 48 hours. She'd come into this house as a stranger. She'd leave as something else. A witness, a warrior. A woman who'd stared into the face of evil and refused to blink. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Simmons. Saw the news. You did good, girl. Your grandmother would be proud. Jasmine smiled for the first time in days. At 10:45, Dr. Patterson returned with the blood test results. He pulled Marcus aside. The phenobarbital levels are concerning but not critical. We'll keep them overnight for monitoring, but I expect both girls to make a full recovery. Will there be long-term effects? It's too early to say. The drug can affect cognitive development if administered over a long period. We'll need to do follow-up testing in the coming months. Marcus nodded. Whatever it takes. I'll do whatever it takes. I know you will. Dr. Patterson put a hand on his shoulder. "You're a good father, Marcus. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." At 11:30, Marcus finally allowed himself to sit down. The twins were sleeping in their hospital cribs. Angela had gone home to make phone calls. Ruth had fallen asleep in her chair. Only Jasmine remained standing quietly by the door. "You should go home," Marcus said. "Get some rest. You've done more than enough." "I'm fine." "You're exhausted. We all are." "I'll sleep when I know they're safe." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. This young woman he'd known for only 2 days. This stranger who'd risked everything to protect his daughters. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you do it? You could have walked away. You could have ignored what you saw and kept your head down. Why did you fight for them?" Jasmine was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke. "Because no one fought for me. When I was a kid in foster care, I prayed every night for someone to notice, someone to see what was happening, someone to care enough to do something about it. But no one ever came, so I promised myself that if I ever had the chance to be that person for someone else, I wouldn't hesitate. Your daughters needed someone in their corner, and I was there. It's as simple as that." Marcus felt tears slide down his cheeks. He didn't wipe them away. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." "You're welcome. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." She was right. Tomorrow would bring press conferences and police interviews and lawyers and doctors. Tomorrow would bring the beginning of a long road to healing. But tonight, in this quiet hospital room, with his daughters safe and his family around him, Marcus Thompson allowed himself to breathe. Catherine was gone. The nightmare was over, at least for now. 3 days had passed since Catherine vanished into the night. Marcus hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a time. Every creak of the hospital floor made him jump. Every unfamiliar face in the hallway made his heart race. The police had assured him that Catherine and Derek were being hunted by every law enforcement agency in the Southeast, but Marcus knew better than anyone how slippery his wife could be. Former wife. He had to keep reminding himself of that. At 6:15 on the third morning, Detective Williams arrived at the hospital room with a thick folder under his arm. His face was grave. "We need to talk, Mr. Thompson, in private." Marcus looked at his daughters still sleeping in their cribs. Ruth was dozing in the corner chair. Jasmine had gone home to shower and change, promising to return by noon. "Ruth can stay," Marcus said. "She's family." Ruth's eyes opened immediately. She'd been awake the whole time. Detective Williams nodded and closed the door. "We've been digging into Catherine Sinclair's background. What we found is disturbing." "How disturbing?" "Her real name isn't Catherine Sinclair. It's Catherine Wells. She's been married 4 times before you. 3 of those husbands are dead." Marcus felt the room tilt. "What?" "First husband Gerald Morrison died in 2015. House fire in Tampa. Ruled accidental. Catherine inherited $600,000. My God. Second husband Robert Chen died in 2017. Car accident in Phoenix. Single vehicle. Hit a tree on a rainy night. Catherine inherited $1.2 million. Ruth put her hand over her mouth. Lord have mercy. Third husband William Hayes died in 2019. Carbon monoxide poisoning in his garage. Ruled suicide. Catherine inherited $2.8 million. And the fourth, Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. James Sinclair, Derek's brother, died in 2021. Heart attack. He was 52 years old, no history of cardiac problems. Catherine inherited $4.5 million plus the house plus Derek. Marcus stared at the detective. Derek is her dead husband's brother. That's how they met, at the funeral. Apparently they'd been having an affair for years before James died. We think James found out about it. We think they killed him to keep him quiet. So Catherine and Derek have been doing this together, killing husbands for money. It looks that way. We're reopening all 4 cases, but here's the thing, Mr. Thompson. The pattern is clear. Catherine finds wealthy, lonely men. She seduces them, marries them, and then within 18 to 24 months they die. Always from accidents or natural causes. Always leaving her everything. And I was supposed to be number 5. You and your daughters, yes. Marcus closed his eyes. He thought about all those nights he'd slept beside Catherine. All those mornings she'd kissed his cheek before he left for work. All those times she'd held his daughters smiling, cooing, pretending to love them, while planning their deaths. Why didn't anyone catch her before? He asked. Because she's smart. She moves around. Different states, different jurisdictions. The deaths are always spaced out, always look natural. And she always has an alibi, usually Derek. He's the one who does the actual killing. She just sets the stage. Ruth stood up, her face twisted with rage. That woman slept under my roof. She ate at my table. She touched those babies with her murdering hands. And she smiled at me the whole time like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. Mrs. Jenkins, I understand your anger. Believe me, we're doing everything we can to find her. Everything isn't enough. She's out there right now, planning her next move. She's not going to let this go. She's going to come back. We have officers stationed outside the hospital around the clock. We have surveillance on your home. We're monitoring all of Catherine's known associates. She has associates you don't know about. A woman like that has connections everywhere. Detective Williams didn't argue. He knew Ruth was right. At 8:45, Angela arrived with coffee and news. The story has gone national, she said, handing Marcus a tablet. CNN, MSNBC, Fox, everyone. They're calling it the Black Widow case. Catherine's face is everywhere. Marcus looked at the screen. There was Catherine's photo, the one from their wedding, blown up on every channel. The headline screamed, Black Millionaire's wife unmasked as serial killer. Atlanta twins poisoned by stepmother. The perfect wife inside a murderer's marriage. This is good, Angela continued. The more exposure she gets, the harder it is for her to hide. Someone will recognize her. Someone will call in a tip. Or she'll get desperate, Marcus said. Desperate people do desperate things. She can't touch you here. The hospital is crawling with security. I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about my daughters. I'm worried about Ruth. I'm worried about Jasmine. Jasmine can take care of herself. Can she? Catherine threatened her directly, told her she would destroy her life. A woman who's killed 4 husbands isn't going to hesitate to kill a nanny who got in her way. Angela's face tightened. I'll call my security firm. We'll get protection for everyone. That's not enough. We need to find her before she finds us. At 10:30, Jasmine returned to the hospital. She looked refreshed but tense, her eyes constantly scanning the hallways. Anything new? She asked. Marcus filled her in on what Detective Williams had revealed. 4 dead husbands. Millions in stolen inheritances. A killing partnership with Derek that had been operating for almost a decade. Jasmine listened in silence, her jaw tightening with each new detail. So the twins, she said finally, they were being drugged so they'd be easier to kill, make it look like they were sick, like they just faded away. That's what the detective thinks. And you? She was going to kill you too. That was the plan. Once the girls were gone, I would die of grief, a heart attack probably, or suicide, something that wouldn't raise too many questions. Jasmine shook her head slowly. I've seen a lot of bad things in my life. Foster homes where kids were beaten, group homes where kids were starved. But this is something else. This is evil wearing a pretty face. She fooled me. For 6 months, she fooled me completely. She fooled everyone. That's what predators do. They study their prey. They learn every weakness, every vulnerability, and then they use it. Jasmine paused. But she underestimated one thing. What? The people who love you. Ruth saw through her from day one. Angela never trusted her. And when I came into this house, I knew within 24 hours that something was wrong. Catherine might be smart, but she's not as smart as she thinks she is. At 12:15, Marcus's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered it. Hello, Marcus. His blood turned to ice. He knew that voice. He'd heard it every day for 6 months. Catherine? Ruth and Jasmine both froze. Angela grabbed her own phone, ready to call the police. Don't bother tracing this call, Catherine said, as if reading his mind. I'm using a burner. I'll be gone before your detective friends even get a signal. What do you want? I wanted to hear your voice. I wanted to tell you that I'm thinking about you, about the girls, about everything we had together. We had nothing. Everything was a lie. Not everything. I did care about you, Marcus. In my own way. You're a good man. Kind, generous, trusting. In another life, things might have been different. In another life, you wouldn't be a murderer. Catherine laughed softly. We all do what we have to do to survive. Some people work, some people steal. I found a more efficient method. You're sick. I'm practical. There's a difference. Her voice hardened. But here's the thing, Marcus. You cost me $45 million. You exposed me on national television. You ruined everything I've spent years building. That's not something I can just walk away from. Is that a threat? It's a promise. You took something from me. Now I'm going to take something from you, not today, not tomorrow, but soon, when you least expect it. When you think you're safe, that's when I'll come for you. You're never getting near my daughters again. Who said anything about the girls? There are other ways to hurt you, Marcus. Other people you care about. Your sister. Your housekeeper. That pretty little nanny who thinks she's so clever. Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. If you touch any of them, you'll what? Call the police. They can't protect everyone all the time. Sooner or later, someone will let their guard down, and when they do, I'll be there. The line went dead. Marcus stood frozen, the phone still pressed to his ear. Angela was already on the line with Detective Williams. Ruth was holding the sleeping twins, her face pale with fear. Jasmine walked over and took the phone from Marcus's hand. She's trying to scare you, Jasmine said. That's what bullies do when they're losing. She's not losing. She's out there, free, and she just told me she's going to kill someone I love. Then we don't give her the chance. We stay together, we stay vigilant, and we trust the police to do their job. The police couldn't protect 4 other husbands. Those husbands didn't know they were in danger. You do. That's the difference. At 2:45, Detective Williams arrived with 2 other officers and a federal marshal. We traced the call, Tulk, he said. It came from a gas station in Chattanooga. Tennessee State Police are on their way, but she's probably long gone by now. She called to threaten me, to threaten my family. I heard, we're upgrading everyone to full protective details. 2 officers for you and the twins. 2 for Angela, 2 for Ruth, 2 for Jasmine. And what about when we leave the hospital? What about when we go home? Your home is still a crime scene. We're processing evidence. You'll need to find somewhere else to stay for a few days. Angela stepped forward. They can stay with me. My building has 24-hour security, cameras in every hallway, doormen who don't let anyone in without proper identification. That works, but no one goes anywhere alone. No one answers the door without checking first. No one trusts anyone they don't recognize. Marcus nodded. Understood. There's something else. Detective Williams hesitated. We found Catherine's laptop at your house, hidden in a compartment under the guest room floorboards. What was on it? Everything. Financial records, communications with Derek, research on potential targets, and a list. A list of what? Future victims, names, addresses, estimated net worth. There are 12 people on that list, Mr. Thompson. 12 wealthy widowers across the country. You were number 8. The room went silent. She was running a factory, Angela said softly. An assembly line of murder. We're contacting everyone on the list, warning them, but some of them might already be compromised. Catherine's been doing this for a long time. She might have already approached some of them. At 4:30, the twins woke up crying. Marcus rushed to their cribs, his heart pounding, but it was just normal baby fussiness. Hungry, wet, wanting attention. He changed them, fed them, held them against his chest until they calmed down. Their small bodies were warm now, not cold like that day in the garden. Their eyes were clearer, more focused. The drugs were leaving their systems. But the fear wasn't leaving his. Every time he looked at his daughters, he saw Catherine's hands pushing them under the water. Every time he heard a door open, he expected her to walk through. Every time his phone rang, he braced for her voice. This was what she wanted. To haunt him. To keep him off balance. To make him feel like a prisoner in his own life. He couldn't let her win. At 6:15, Der Patterson arrived with good news. The toxicology results are back. Phenobarbital levels have dropped significantly. Another day or 2 and they should be completely clear. Any permanent damage? It's too early to say for certain, but infants are remarkably resilient. With proper care and stimulation, they should catch up developmentally. I'm cautiously optimistic. What about mentally? What about emotionally? They're young enough that they won't remember any of this. The trauma is yours, Mr. Thompson, not theirs. They'll grow up not knowing what almost happened to them. That's probably for the best. Marcus wasn't so sure. Secrets had a way of coming out. Lies had a way of festering. Would he tell his daughters someday? Would he explain why their mother's portrait hung on the wall, but there were no pictures of their stepmother anywhere? Those were questions for another day. Right now, he just wanted them safe. At 8:20, Angela returned from a meeting with her security team. I've hired private investigators, she announced. The best in the business. Former FBI. They're going to work parallel to the police track Catherine and Derek through their own channels. Is that legal? As long as they don't interfere with the official investigation, yes. And they have resources the police don't. Connections in places the police can't go. How much is this costing? Don't worry about that. You're my brother? Those are my nieces. I would spend every penny I have to keep you safe. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. Angela, I don't know what I would do without you. You'd figure it out. You always do, but you don't have to. That's what family is for. Ruth appeared in the doorway. "I just got off the phone with my nephew. He's a retired Marine, lives in Savannah. He's driving up tonight to help provide security." "Ruth, you don't have to... Don't tell me what I have to do." Her voice was fierce. "I've been protecting this family for 40 years. I'm not stopping now." At 9:45, Jasmine's phone rang. She stepped into the hallway to answer it. When she came back, her face was ashen. "That was Mr. Simmons, from the pharmacy." "What's wrong?" "Someone broke into his shop last night, smashed the security cameras, destroyed all his files, including the original test results from the formula sample." Marcus felt the bottom drop out of his stomach. "Catherine?" He didn't see who did it, but they knew exactly where to look. They knew what to destroy. "She's covering her tracks, eliminating evidence." "There's more. He said they left a note, taped to his counter." "What did it say?" Jasmine swallowed hard. "It said, 'Tell the nanny she's next.'" The room exploded into chaos. Detective Williams was called. Officers were dispatched to the pharmacy. Jasmine was placed under immediate protective custody. But through it all, one thing was clear. Catherine wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She was hunting. At 11:15, Marcus sat alone in the hospital chapel, his head bowed, his hands clasped. He wasn't a particularly religious man. Denise had been the spiritual one in their marriage. She'd dragged him to church every Sunday, made him say grace before meals, taught him to pray when times got hard. After she died, he'd stopped praying. What was the point God had taken his wife? God had left him alone with 2 babies and a hole in his heart that nothing could fill. But now in this small, quiet room, he found himself reaching out to something beyond himself. "I don't know if you're listening," he whispered. "I don't know if you care, but I need help. I can't protect everyone on my own. I can't be everywhere at once. I can't stop a woman who's killed 4 people and wants to kill more." He paused, tears streaming down his face. "Denise, if you can hear me, please, watch over our daughters, keep them safe, and help me find the strength to do what needs to be done." The chapel door opened. Jasmine stepped inside. "They told me I'd find you here. I needed a moment." "I understand." She sat down beside him. "I'm not very religious either, but my grandmother used to say that God helps those who help themselves." She said prayer wasn't about asking for miracles. It was about finding the courage to face what's coming. What's coming is a woman who's threatened to kill you. "I know." "Aren't you scared?" Jasmine was quiet for a moment. "I've been scared my whole life. Scared of foster parents who hurt me. Scared of a system that failed me. Scared of a world that didn't see me. But I learned something along the way. Fear doesn't go away when you run from it. It goes away when you face it." "Catherine isn't some childhood bully. She's a killer. And I'm a survivor. So are you. So are your daughters." Jasmine turned to look at him. "We're not going to let her win Mr. Thompson. Not today. Not ever." Marcus studied her face. This young woman who'd walked into his life 3 days ago. This stranger who'd risked everything to protect his children. This warrior in a nanny's uniform. "Call me Marcus," he said. "Okay, Marcus. And thank you, again, for everything. You can thank me when this is over. When Catherine is behind bars and your daughters are safe. Until then, we have work to do." At midnight, the hospital was quiet. The twins were sleeping. Ruth was resting in the next room. Angela had gone home to check on things. Marcus stood at the window looking out at the city lights, his mind racing. Catherine was out there somewhere. Planning, scheming, preparing her next move, and he had no idea when or where she would strike. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. He opened it. It was a photo, a picture of Angela's building, taken from the street, tonight. Underneath the photo, a single line of text, "Nice place. Shame if something happened to it." Marcus's blood ran cold. He started to dial Angela's number. Before he could press call, another text came through. Another photo. This one of Ruth's church in Decatur, where she went every Sunday, where her whole congregation knew her by name. Such a devoted woman. God must love her very much. And then another photo, this one of a small apartment building in West End, Jasmine's building. "Sleeping tight, I hope. Dreams can be so fragile." Marcus's hands were shaking so hard he almost dropped the phone. A final text appeared. "I told you I would take something from you. The question is, which one will I choose? Tick-tock, Marcus. Tick-tock." He started running. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't have a plan. He just knew he had to move, had to act, had to do something. Detective Williams caught him in the hallway. "Mr. Thompson, what's wrong?" Marcus showed him the texts. The detective's face went pale. "She's been watching them, all of them. She's going to kill one of them, tonight. We have to stop her." We'll send units to all 3 locations immediately. That's not enough. She's already there. She's already watching. Mr. Thompson, I need you to calm down. Don't tell me to calm down, Marcus's voice echoed through the hospital. That monster is threatening my family. She's standing outside their homes right now, taking pictures, planning their murders, and you want me to calm down. Detective Williams grabbed his shoulders. Listen to me. We are going to protect them. We are going to find Catherine, but I need you to think clearly. She wants you panicked. She wants you making mistakes. Don't give her what she wants. Marcus forced himself to breathe. In, out. In, out. The detective was right. Panic was Catherine's weapon. She was using his fear against him, making him feel helpless, making him feel like he was already defeated. But he wasn't defeated. He was angry. And anger was something he could use. Okay, he said, his voice steady now. What do we do? First, we alert everyone, get them to safe locations. Then we set a trap. A trap? Catherine wants you scared. She wants you running in circles. But what if you gave her what she really wants? What if you gave her you? Marcus understood immediately. Use me as bait. It's risky, but if we can draw her out, get her to make a move, we can catch her. End this once and for all. And if it goes wrong, then we lose our best chance to stop her. Marcus thought about his daughters sleeping peacefully in their hospital room. He thought about Ruth, who'd protected him his whole life. He thought about Angela, who'd always had his back. He thought about Jasmine, who'd walked into danger without hesitation. They were all at risk because of him. Because Catherine wanted his money. Because he'd been foolish enough to marry her. This was his mess. His responsibility. Do it, he said. Set the trap. I'll be the bait. Detective Williams nodded slowly. You're a brave man, Mr. Thompson. No, I'm a desperate man. There's a difference. At 1:30 in the morning, the plan was in motion. Angela, Ruth, and Jasmine were moved to a secure location, a federal safe house on the outskirts of the city. The twins were transferred to a private wing of the hospital with armed guards at every entrance, and Marcus was alone. He sat in his empty hospital room, the door unlocked, the security cameras disabled. Anyone could walk in. Anyone could finish what Catherine had started. His phone sat on the table beside him, waiting. At 2:15 it rang. Hello, Catherine. You figured it out. Her voice was amused. I wondered how long it would take you. I know what you're doing. The photos, the threats. You're trying to distract me, keep me off balance while you make your real move. Am I? Where are you, Catherine? Where are you really? Silence on the line. Then a soft laugh. You've gotten smarter, Marcus. I always knew you would. Once you stopped thinking with your grief and started thinking with your head. Answer the question. I'm closer than you think. Close enough to touch you. Marcus felt ice crawl down his spine. You're in the hospital. Give the man a prize? He stood up, his heart hammering. The police have this place surrounded. The police are looking for a blonde woman in expensive clothes. They're not looking for a janitor with dark hair and a mop. Marcus spun toward the door. It was still closed. Still quiet. You won't get away with this. I already have. 4 times. What's one more? The line went dead. Marcus grabbed the panic button Detective Williams had given him. Pressed it hard. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. Still nothing. She'd disabled it somehow. Jammed the signal, cut the wires. He was alone. The door handle began to turn. Marcus backed toward the window. 12 floors up, no fire escape, no way out. The door opened. A janitor stood in the doorway. Dark hair, dark eyes, a mop in one hand, and a gun in the other. Catherine smiled. Hello, husband. Miss me? Catherine stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. The click of the lock echoed like a gunshot. Marcus pressed his back against the window. 12 floors below, police cars sat idle in the parking lot. Officers who had no idea a killer had slipped past them. You look surprised, Catherine said, tilting her head. Did you really think a few cops and a panic button would stop me? How did you get in? The same way I get in everywhere. Through the service entrance. In a uniform no one looks twice at. Invisible, forgettable, just another worker bee in the hive. She raised the gun, pointing it at his chest. But you're not invisible, Marcus. You're on every news channel in the country. The poor black billionaire whose white wife tried to kill his children. Do you know how much trouble you've caused me? You caused this yourself. I was careful. For years I was careful. I planned everything perfectly, but then you had to come home early. You had to find me in the garden. You had to believe that old housekeeper over your own wife. She was right about you. Ruth Jenkins. Catherine spat the name like a curse. I should have dealt with her first, pushed her down the stairs, made it look like an accident, but I was too patient, too cautious. I won't make that mistake again. Marcus's mind was racing. He needed to stall, needed to give someone time to realize what was happening. What's your plan now? He asked. Kill me and walk out. The whole hospital knows you're here. No, they don't. They know a janitor that named Maria Santos came in for the night shift, a janitor who will clock out in 30 minutes and disappear forever. Catherine smiled. By the time they find your body, I'll be in Mexico. Derek has a contact there, new identities, new lives. We've done this before. You won't get the money. Everything's frozen. My lawyers made sure of that. I don't care about the money anymore. Her voice hardened. You took everything from me, my reputation, my freedom, my future. The money was just a bonus. Now it's personal. So that's what this is, revenge. This is justice, my kind of justice. She stepped closer, the gun steady in her hand. Do you know what it feels like to have nothing, to grow up poor, invisible, powerless, to watch rich people like you sail through life while people like me have to fight for every scrap? Don't pretend you're some kind of victim. I'm not pretending. I am a victim of a system that rewards people like you and punishes people like me. I just found a way to even the score. By murdering innocent people, by taking what I deserved. Those men were already dying, lonely, miserable, going through the motions of life without actually living. I gave them something to live for, a beautiful wife who made them feel young again, and when they died happy. That's more than most people can say. Marcus stared at her. The twisted logic, the complete lack of remorse. This wasn't just a killer, this was a monster wearing human skin. You're insane, he said. Maybe, but I'm also holding the gun. She raised it higher, aiming at his face. Any last words? At that moment, the door burst open. Jasmine stood in the doorway, a fire extinguisher in her hands. Before Catherine could turn, Jasmine swung with all her strength, catching Catherine on the side of the head. The gun went flying. Catherine crumpled to the floor. Marcus rushed forward, kicking the gun across the room. His hands were shaking so hard he could barely breathe. How did you know? He gasped. I didn't go to the safe house. Jasmine was breathing hard, the extinguisher still gripped in her hands. I knew you were up to something. Knew you were trying to play hero, so I stayed behind. Watched the monitors. Saw her come in. You could have been killed. So could you, but here we are. She looked down at Catherine, who was groaning on the floor, blood trickling from her temple. Call the police, now? Marcus grabbed his phone and dialed. Within minutes, officers flooded the room. Catherine was handcuffed and dragged to her feet, her eyes glazed her janitor's uniform, stained with blood. As they led her toward the door, she turned and looked at Marcus one last time. This isn't over, she said, her voice slurred but still venomous. Derek is still out there, and he's worse than me. Detective Williams appeared in the doorway. Get her out of here. They dragged Catherine into the hallway. Her laughter echoed off the walls, high and manic, as they took her toward the elevator. Marcus sank into a chair, his legs finally giving out. Jasmine sat down beside him, and the fire extinguisher still in her lap. Thank you, he whispered. You saved my life. You would have done the same for me. I don't know if I would have been brave enough. Bravery isn't about not being scared, it's about being scared and doing it anyway. Jasmine set the extinguisher down. Besides, I made a promise. Those babies are going to have their father. That's not negotiable. At 3:45 in the morning, the hospital was in chaos. News crews had somehow gotten wind of the arrest and were camped outside the main entrance. Phones were ringing non-stop. Administrators were running damage control. But in the private wing where the twins slept, everything was quiet. Marcus stood between their cribs watching them breathe. They had no idea how close they'd come to losing their father. No idea that the woman who'd pretended to love them was now in police custody, charged with 4 counts of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. Ruth appeared in the doorway. Her face was drawn with exhaustion, but her eyes were fierce. I just got word from Detective Williams. They caught Derek. Marcus spun around. What? Where? Tennessee border. He was trying to cross into Kentucky when state troopers pulled him over. He had 3 different fake IDs in the car, $50,000 in cash, and a loaded shotgun. Is he talking? Not yet, but they're working on him. Williams thinks he'll flip on Catherine to save himself. Men like that always do. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest, a knot of tension that had been tightening for days. So it's really over. Catherine is in custody. Derek is in custody. The evidence against them is overwhelming. Angela says they'll both get life minimum. Life isn't long enough for what they did. No, Ruth agreed. But it's something. It's a start. At 5:15, Angela arrived at the hospital. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, but there was a triumphant gleam in her eyes. The FBI just unsealed the indictments. 17 counts total. Murder, attempted murder, insurance fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy. They're even looking at RICO charges because of the interstate nature of the crimes. What about the other victims, the families? They're being notified. Investigators are reaching out to everyone on Catherine's list, including the families of her previous husbands. There's going to be a lot of pain, a lot of old wounds reopened, but at least they'll finally know the truth. Marcus nodded slowly. What about us? What happens now? Now we go home. We rebuild. We try to put this behind us. Is that even possible after everything that's happened? Angela sat down beside him and took his hand. Marcus, when Mama died, I didn't think I'd ever recover. When Daddy followed her a year later, I was sure I was going to fall apart. But I didn't. You know why? Because I had you, and you had me. Family doesn't make the pain go away, but it makes it bearable. I almost lost everything, Angela. My daughters, my life, my mind. But you didn't. You fought. You trusted the right people. And you survived. She squeezed his hand. That's what Thompsons do. We survive. At 7:30, Dr. Patterson arrived with the morning update. The twins' blood work is clean. Phenobarbital levels are undetectable. They're cleared for discharge. Marcus felt tears spring to his eyes. They can come home? They can come home, though I'd recommend continued follow-up visits. Weekly at first, then monthly. We want to make sure there are no lingering effects. Whatever it takes, whatever they need. There's one more thing. Dr. Patterson hesitated. Given everything that's happened, I'd suggest considering therapy, not just for the girls, but for you as well. Trauma like this leaves marks that aren't always visible. I'm not crazy. No one said you were. But you've been through hell. You've been betrayed by someone you loved. You've had your children poisoned, your life threatened, your home invaded. That kind of experience changes people. There's no shame in getting help. Marcus thought about the nightmares he'd been having, the way he jumped at every sound, the constant feeling of being watched. I'll think about it, he said. That's all I ask. At 9:15, Marcus carried his daughters out of the hospital for the first time in 4 days. A crowd of reporters was waiting outside, shouting questions, snapping photos, shoving microphones in his face. Mr. Thompson, how does it feel to know your wife was a serial killer? Marcus, are you planning to sue the hospital? Will you be pressing charges personally? Marcus didn't answer. He just kept walking, the twins clutched tight against his chest, flanked by Angela on one side and Detective Williams on the other. Jasmine and Ruth waited by the car. The moment Marcus reached them, Ruth opened the door and helped him secure the babies in their car seats. Let's go home, Ruth said. I'll make breakfast, real breakfast, not that hospital garbage. For the first time in days, Marcus smiled. At 10:45, the car pulled into Angela's building. The security team Angela had hired was already in place, checking credentials, scanning faces, making sure no one approached without authorization. Inside the apartment, everything was quiet, clean, safe. Marcus set the twins down on a blanket in the living room. They looked around with curious-eyed, babbling to each other, reaching for the toys Angela had bought. They seem happy, Jasmine observed. They're resilient. Kids usually are. Are you happy? Marcus considered the question. I don't know if happy is the right word. Relieved, maybe. Grateful. Exhausted. But happy, I'm not sure I remember what that feels like. It'll come back. Give it time. How much time? As much as it takes. At noon, Detective Williams called with an update. Derek flipped. He's giving us everything. Names, dates, locations. He even told us where they buried James Sinclair's original autopsy report. So they really did kill all those men. Every single one. Catherine did the seducing. Derek did the killing. They split the money 50-50 and moved on to the next target, like clockwork. How did no one catch them before? Because they were smart. They never killed in the same state twice. They waited years between targets. They kept their real identities hidden. If you hadn't survived Marcus, they probably would have kept going for another decade. Lucky me. You're alive. Your daughters are alive. That's more than lucky. That's a miracle. At 2:30, Catherine was arraigned in Fulton County Superior Court. Angela attended the hearing and reported back via text message. She pleaded not guilty, showed no emotion, stared straight ahead like she was watching a movie, cold as ice. Marcus wasn't surprised. Catherine had been performing her whole life. Why would she stop now? A second text followed, bail denied. She's considered a flight risk. She'll be held until trial. At least she wouldn't be getting out. At least she wouldn't be stalking his family in the middle of the night, taking pictures, sending threats. But trials took time. Months, sometimes years. And until Catherine was convicted and sentenced, Marcus knew he wouldn't truly be able to rest. At 4:15, Ruth brought out a tray of food. Fried chicken collard greens, macaroni and cheese, cornbread. Soul food. Comfort food. The kind of meal Denise used to love. Marcus stared at the plate, memories flooding back. "You okay?" Ruth asked. "Just thinking about Denise, wondering what she would say about all this. She'd say you did the right thing. She'd say she's proud of you. She'd say take care of those babies and don't let one bad experience close your heart forever. You really believe that? I knew Denise for 10 years. She was the kindest, most forgiving person I ever met. She'd want you to move on. Not forget, but move on." There's a difference. Marcus picked up a piece of cornbread, took a bite. The taste brought tears to his eyes. This was her recipe. "I know. I've been saving it for a special occasion." Ruth sat down across from him. "Today feels special. We're all alive. We're all together. That's worth celebrating." At 6:45, Jasmine came to say goodbye. "My shift at the hospital starts tomorrow. I can't take any more time off. The nanny position is still open, if you want it." Jasmine shook her head. "Those babies need stability right now. They need someone who can be there full time, not running off to work double shifts at the hospital." "Then quit the hospital." "I can't do that. The work matters to me. Those kids in the pediatric ward, they need someone fighting for them, too." Marcus understood. Jasmine wasn't the type to walk away from responsibility. It was what made her who she was. "Will you at least visit? The girls are going to miss you." "I'll visit. Every week if you'll have me." "We'll have you." Jasmine picked up her bag and headed for the door. Then she stopped and turned back. "Marcus, can I say something?" "Of course." "What Catherine did to you wasn't your fault. You didn't fail your daughters by trusting the wrong person. You trusted because that's who you are. A good man, a loving father. Don't let what she did change that." "I don't know if I can trust anyone again." "Then start small. Trust Ruth. Trust Angela. Trust me." She smiled. "We've earned it." At 8:20, the twins were asleep in their portable cribs. Ruth had retired to the guest room. Angela was on the phone with her law firm discussing strategy for the civil lawsuit she was planning to file against Catherine. Marcus sat alone in the living room, a glass of bourbon in his hand, staring at the wall. He thought about everything that had happened in the past week. The cold water, the blue lips, the pharmacy report, the confrontation, the threats. The gun in Catherine's hand, Jasmine swinging the fire extinguisher. It felt like a movie, like something that had happened to someone else. He couldn't quite connect it to his own life. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. His blood went cold. Not again. He opened the message. "This is Amanda Morrison, Gerald Morrison's daughter. I saw you on the news. I've been trying to prove my father was murdered for 8 years. Thank you for finally giving us justice. God bless you and your family." Marcus let out a long breath. Not a threat, a thank you. Another message came through, different number. "Robert Chen's brother here. My family has been living in limbo since 2017. We always knew Catherine killed him, but we could never prove it. Because of you, he can finally rest in peace." And another. "My name is Derek Hayes. William Hayes was my dad. I was 17 when he died. Everyone said he killed himself, but I never believed it. Thank you for exposing the truth. Thank you for fighting back." The messages kept coming, one after another. Families who had lost loved ones to Catherine's schemes. Families who had suspected the truth, but had no way to prove it. Families who had been waiting years for someone to believe them. By 9:30, Marcus had received 14 messages, 14 families, 14 victims. He wasn't alone. He'd never been alone. Angela found him still staring at his phone, tears streaming down his face. "What is it? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong." He handed her the phone. "Everything is finally right." At 10:45, Marcus stood at the window of Angela's apartment, looking out at the city lights. Atlanta stretched below him, millions of people living their lives unaware of the drama that had unfolded in their midst. Somewhere out there, Catherine was sitting in a jail cell plotting her next move. Somewhere out there, Derek was cutting deals to save his own skin. Somewhere out there, families were grieving for loved ones they'd lost years ago. But here in this apartment, his daughters were safe. His family was together, and tomorrow they would start rebuilding. His phone rang. Unknown number again. He answered it. "Mr. Thompson, this is Special Agent Patricia Collins, FBI. I'm the lead investigator on the Sinclair case." "Yes. I wanted to let you know that we've completed our preliminary investigation. Based on Derek's testimony and the evidence we've recovered, we're confident that Catherine and Derek are responsible for at least 6 murders, including the 4 previously identified and 2 additional cases in Florida and Nevada." 6 people. Possibly more. We're still investigating, but I wanted you to know that your actions may have saved lives beyond your own family. Catherine had already identified her next target, a widower in San Francisco with 3 young children. If you hadn't stopped her, that family would be next. Marcus closed his eyes. A father like him, children like his. One more tragedy narrowly avoided. "Thank you for telling me. Thank you for fighting back. Most people in your position would have given up, would have taken the easy path. You didn't. That took courage. I didn't have a choice. She was poisoning my babies. There's always a choice, Mr. Thompson. You chose to fight. That matters." After he hung up, Marcus stood at the window for a long time. The city lights blurred in his vision. He thought about Denise, about what she would say if she could see him now. "You did good, baby." He could almost hear her voice, almost feel her hand on his shoulder. "You protected our girls. You did exactly what I knew you would do." At midnight, Marcus finally went to bed. He lay in the dark, listening to the sound of his daughters breathing through the baby monitor. Safe, alive, growing stronger every day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the trial, the media, the long process of healing. But for the first time since Catherine had entered his life, Marcus felt something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. The phone buzzed one last time. A text from Jasmine. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow is a new day, and those babies are going to need their daddy at full strength." Marcus smiled and closed his eye. Outside, the city slept. The night was quiet. And somewhere in a jail cell 40 miles away, Catherine Sinclair stared at the ceiling. Her mind still spinning, still scheming, still refusing to accept that she had finally lost. But she had lost. For the first time in her life, she had faced an opponent she couldn't charm, couldn't manipulate, couldn't kill. A father protecting his children. A family that refused to break. At 1:15 in the morning, Ruth woke to check on the twins. She stood between their cribs, watching them sleep, tears rolling down her weathered cheeks. "Your mama would be so proud," she whispered. "So proud of all of us." Still, she bent down and kissed each tiny forehead. Then she returned to bed, her heart lighter than it had been in years. At 2:30, Angela finally finished her work and collapsed onto the couch. She'd been running on adrenaline for days. Now the crash was coming. But before she fell asleep, she sent one final email to her legal team. "Prepare everything. We're going to destroy them in court. No mercy, no deals. Justice for every single victim." At 3:45, Marcus woke from a nightmare. Catherine's face, the gun, the sound of the shot that never came. He sat up, breathing hard, sweat soaking his shirt. Then he heard it, a soft cooing from the baby monitor, Zoe waking up hungry. He got out of bed and padded to the twins' room, picked up his daughter, held her against his chest. "It's okay, baby girl. Daddy's here. Daddy's always going to be here." Zoe looked up at him with Denise's eyes, smiled her mother's smile. And Marcus Thompson, billionaire. Survivor father finally let himself cry. Not tears of fear, not tears of grief, tears of relief. The nightmare was over. The monster was behind bars, and his family was whole again. At 4:15, the first light of dawn began to creep over Atlanta. A new day was beginning, and for the first time in a very long time, Marcus was ready to face it. 6 months had passed since that night in the hospital room. Marcus stood outside the Fulton County Courthouse, his daughters in his arms, watching the media frenzy unfold on the steps below. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Security guards held back the crowd, pressing against the barricades. Today was the day. The verdict. Angela appeared at his side, her face tense. "The jury's coming back. It's time." "How long were they out?" 4 hours? The prosecution says that's a good sign. Not long enough to indicate doubt." Marcus looked down at Zoe and Maya. They were 2 years old now. Walking, talking, laughing. Their eyes were clear. Their movements were confident. No trace remained of the drugs that had once clouded their systems. But Marcus remembered. Every day he remembered. "Let's go, then," he said. Inside the courtroom, every seat was filled. Families of Catherine's previous victims sat in the front rows, their faces drawn with years of grief and anger. Media representatives filled the back. FBI agents lined the walls. And at the defense table, Catherine Sinclair sat perfectly still, her blonde hair pulled back, her face expressionless. She wore a simple gray dress, no jewelry, minimal makeup. The performance of a humble, misunderstood woman. But Marcus saw through it now. He would always see through it. Derek sat beside her, his head bowed, his shoulders slumped. He'd cut a deal with prosecutors agreeing to testify against Catherine in exchange for life without parole instead of the death penalty. His testimony had been devastating. 3 days on the stand detailing every murder, every scheme, every lie. Catherine had watched him betray her without a flicker of emotion. That was the scariest part. Even now, facing the possibility of execution, she showed nothing. The judge entered. Everyone rose. "Be seated." The jury filed in. 12 faces, carefully neutral, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Marcus felt Ruth's hand grip his arm. Jasmine sat on his other side, her jaw clenched. Angela was behind him, her fingers digging into his shoulder. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreman stood. "We have your honor. On the count of murder in the first degree in the death of Gerald Morrison, how do you find guilty?" A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Someone in the victims section sobbed. "On the count of murder in the first degree in the death of Robert Chen, how do you find guilty?" Marcus closed his eyes. The names kept coming. William Hayes, James Sinclair, Thomas Williams, Patricia Reeves. 6 counts of murder. 6 guilty verdicts. Then came the charges related to his family. On the count of attempted murder in the first degree against Marcus Thompson, how do you find Conley guilty? On the count of attempted murder in the first degree against Zoe Thompson, how do you find Bortz guilty? On the count of attempted murder in the first degree against Maya Thompson, how do you find guilty? Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. He didn't wipe them away. The foreman continued. Insurance fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, assault, poisoning, every single charge. Guilty on all counts. When the last verdict was read, the courtroom erupted. Cheers from the victims' families. Shouts from the media. Cameras flashing despite the judge's orders. Catherine finally moved. She turned slowly and looked directly at Marcus. Her lips curved into a small smile. A smile that said this wasn't over. A smile that said she would never stop hating him. Then the bailiffs took her away. At 3:45, the prosecution announced they would seek the death penalty in the sentencing phase. Outside the courthouse, Marcus faced the cameras for the first time. Today, justice was served, he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. But no verdict can bring back the lives Catherine Sinclair took. No verdict can undo the pain she caused to so many families. What we can do is remember the victims, honor their memories, and make sure that predators like Catherine never have the opportunity to hurt anyone again. A reporter pushed forward. Mr. Thompson, what's next for you and your family? Marcus looked at his daughters, held safe in Ruth's arms. We're going to heal, we're going to live, and we're going to make sure some good comes out of this tragedy. Can you elaborate on that? Not yet, but soon. We have plans. At 5:15, the Thompson family gathered in Angela's apartment for a private celebration. It wasn't really a celebration. The mood was too heavy for that. But it was a recognition, an acknowledgement that the worst was over. Ruth had prepared a feast, fried chicken collard greens, macaroni and cheese, candied yams, Denise's favorites. The apartment smelled like home. Marcus sat at the head of the table, his daughters in high chairs beside him, his family surrounding him. Angela, Ruth, Jasmine, Dr. Patterson, Detective Williams, Mr. Simmons from the pharmacy, everyone who had helped save his life. I want to thank you all, Marcus said, raising his glass. 6 months ago, I was a broken man, a fool who trusted the wrong person, a father who almost lost his children. If it weren't for the people in this room, I wouldn't be here today. My daughters wouldn't be here. So thank you, from the bottom of my heart. Ruth wiped her eyes. You don't need to thank us. We're family. That's what family does. She's right, Angela added. You would have done the same for any of us. I hope I never have to prove it. Jasmine stood up, her glass raised. To Marcus, to Zoe and Maya, to Ruth and Angela, to everyone who refused to look away when they saw something wrong. May we always have the courage to fight for what's right. Hear, hear, Dr. Patterson said. They drank, they ate, they talked, and laughed, and cried. And for the first time, in 6 months, Marcus felt something like peace. At 8:20, after the guests had left and the twins were asleep, Marcus found Jasmine standing on the balcony looking out at the city lights. You're not leaving yet. I was waiting to talk to you privately. About what? Jasmine turned to face him. About the foundation. Marcus's eyebrows rose. You know about that. Angela told me. The Denise Thompson Foundation, a nonprofit to protect children in vulnerable situations, to provide legal aid and support for families dealing with domestic threats. It was supposed to be a surprise. Angela isn't good at keeping secrets when she's excited. Jasmine smiled slightly. She also told me you want me to run it. I do. You're the perfect person for the job. Marcus, I'm a nursing assistant. I don't have a business degree. I don't have management experience. I don't know the first thing about running a foundation. You know how to fight for children. You know how to see what others miss. You know how to stand up to bullies and predators. Everything else can be learned. Jasmine shook her head slowly. I don't know. What don't you know? Whether I'm ready for something this big. Whether I deserve it? Marcus stepped closer. Jasmine, you saved my life. You saved my daughter's. You walked into a dangerous situation with nothing but your instincts and a fire extinguisher, and you stopped a killer. If anyone deserves this opportunity, it's you. But why me? You could hire anyone. Someone with credentials. Someone with connections. I could, but I don't want someone with credentials and connections. I want someone with heart. Someone who will fight for every child like they fought for mine. He paused. I want you. Jasmine was quiet for a long moment. The city hummed below them. The night air was cool and fresh. My grandmother used to tell me that God puts us in certain places at certain times for a reason, she said finally. I never believed her. I thought I was just unlucky, born into a bad situation, shuffled through a broken system, left to figure things out on my own. But then I came to your house. I saw your daughters. I saw what Catherine was doing to them. And something inside me just knew. I knew I was supposed to be there. I knew I was supposed to stop her. She looked at Marcus. Maybe my grandmother was right. Maybe there is a reason. Maybe this is it. Families. Is that a yes? Jasmine took a deep breath. It's a yes. I'll run your foundation. I'll fight for every child who needs someone in their corner. And I'll make you proud. You already have. At 10:45, Marcus returned to his family's Buckhead mansion for the first time since Catherine's arrest. The house had been cleaned, renovated, exorcised of every trace of her presence. New furniture, new colors, new energy, but some things remained the same. Ruth walked through the front door and took a deep breath. Smells like home again. Does it feel like home? It will. Give it time. The twins ran through the hallways, their laughter echoing off the walls. They didn't remember Catherine. They didn't remember the cold water or the drugs or the terror. They just knew this was their house with their toys and their rooms and their daddy. Maybe that was a blessing. Maybe forgetting was the best gift they could have been given. Marcus walked through the living room past the piano that Denise used to play past the windows where he'd once stood watching the rain. He stopped at the wall where her portrait hung. Her smile, her eyes, her spirit. I did it, baby, he whispered. I kept them safe, just like I promised. He could almost hear her voice. I knew you would. At midnight, after the twins were asleep in their cribs, Marcus sat in his study with a glass of bourbon and a stack of papers. The foundation documents, the articles of incorporation, the mission statement he'd written and rewritten a dozen times. The Denise Thompson Foundation exists to protect children who cannot protect themselves, to provide resources for families facing domestic threats, to train advocates, support investigators, and ensure that no child suffers in silence. It wasn't enough. No foundation could undo what Catherine had done. No charity could bring back the victims or heal the wounds she'd inflicted. But it was something, a light in the darkness, a way to honor Denise's memory while protecting others from the same fate. The phone rang. Unknown number. Marcus hesitated. Unknown numbers still made his heart race even after all these months. He answered it anyway. Mr. Thompson, this is Sarah Morrison, Gerald Morrison's daughter. We spoke on the phone after the verdict. Yes, I remember. I wanted to tell you something. My father died 8 years ago. For 8 years, I've been trying to prove that Catherine killed him. I went to the police. I hired private investigators. I wrote to every news outlet in the country. No one would listen. They all said it was just a tragic accident. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Be proud. Her voice cracked with emotion. Because of you, my father finally has justice. Because of you, my family can finally move on. I don't know how to thank you for that. You don't need to thank me. I was just trying to protect my own family. That's exactly why you're a hero, because you weren't trying to be one. You were just doing what any good father would do, and in the process, you saved us all." After he hung up, Marcus sat in the darkness for a long time. Hero. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a fool who'd been lucky enough to survive his own stupidity. But maybe that was enough. Maybe surviving was its own kind of heroism. 2 weeks later, the sentencing phase began. Catherine took the stand in her own defense. For 3 hours, she wove a tale of abuse, manipulation, and desperation. She claimed Derek had forced her into the schemes. She claimed she'd been a victim herself, trapped in a cycle of violence she couldn't escape. Marcus watched from the gallery, his jaw tight. She was good. Even now, facing death, she was performing, trying to charm the jury into sparing her life. But the jury wasn't charmed. They'd heard the evidence. They'd seen the autopsy photos. They'd listened to Derek describe how Catherine had celebrated after each murder, toasting their success with champagne and laughter. At 4:15 on a Thursday afternoon, the jury returned with their recommendation: death by lethal injection. Catherine heard the verdict without reaction. She stood, straightened her dress, and allowed the bailiffs to lead her away. But as she passed Marcus, she paused. "You think you've won?" she whispered. "But you haven't. You'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering, waiting. That's my gift to you, Marcus. Fear that never ends." Marcus met her eyes. "No, Catherine, I'm not afraid anymore. You have no power over me. You have no power over my family. You're just a small, broken woman who's going to spend her last days in a concrete cell knowing that everything she built has crumbled to dust." Catherine's mask cracked. For just a second, he saw the rage beneath, the hatred, the madness. Then the bailiffs pulled her away and she was gone. 1 year after the verdict, the Denise Thompson Foundation held its first annual gala. The event was held at the High Museum of Art in Midtown Atlanta. 500 guests in formal attire, including business leaders, politicians, celebrities, and advocates from across the country. Marcus stood at the podium looking out at the sea of faces. His daughters sat in the front row with Ruth, now 3 years old, dressed in matching yellow dresses. Angela was beside them, beaming with pride. Jasmine sat at the VIP table, nervous and excited in equal measure. 1 year ago, Marcus began, I stood in this city as a broken man. My wife had tried to kill my children. My home was a crime scene. My faith in humanity was shattered. The room was silent. Every eye was fixed on him. But I learned something in that darkness. I learned that light doesn't just appear on its own. Light comes from people. From the housekeeper who refused to stay silent. From the nanny who risked everything to protect 2 little girls she'd just met. From the sister who never stopped believing in me. From the police officers and doctors and lawyers who work day and night to bring a killer to justice. He paused, gathering himself. The Denise Thompson Foundation exists because of those people, because of everyone who sees something wrong and refuses to look away, because of everyone who believes that children deserve to be protected, loved, and safe. He looked at his daughters. They waved at him, grinning. My late wife Denise used to say that every child is a gift from God, that our job as parents is to unwrap that gift carefully, nurture it gently, and help it grow into something beautiful. She didn't live to see our daughters grow up, but I know she's watching, and I know she's proud. Applause erupted. People rose to their feet. Marcus stepped back from the podium, overwhelmed. Jasmine took his place. Thank you all for being here tonight, she said, and thank you to Marcus Thompson for giving me the opportunity to lead this incredible organization. In our first year, we've helped 147 families. We've trained 300 advocates. We've partnered with law enforcement agencies in 12 states, and we're just getting started. She looked at Marcus with tears in her eyes. This foundation isn't just about protecting children from predators. It's about creating a world where predators can't hide, where neighbors watch out for each other, where families have the resources to fight back, where no child ever feels alone. The applause grew louder. At 10:15 after the gala ended and the guests had departed, Marcus stood in the empty ballroom with his family. Ruth held Maya in her arms. Angela held Zoe. Jasmine stood beside them, exhausted but happy. We did it, Angela said. We actually did it. No, Marcus replied. We started it. There's a lot more work to do. There always is, but tonight we celebrate. Ruth smiled, her weathered face glowing. Your mama would be so proud. Both your mamas. Marcus thought about Denise, about the life they'd built together, about the future she'd never see. And then he thought about his daughters, about the life still ahead of them, about the world they would inherit. Let's go home, he said. 3 months later, on a warm spring afternoon, Marcus stood in his backyard garden with a shovel in his hands. The old copper basin, the one Catherine had used to bathe the twins in freezing water, had been sitting in the garden shed for over a year. He'd considered throwing it away, destroying it, erasing every trace of that terrible day. But Jasmine had suggested something different. Turn it into something beautiful, she'd said. Take the pain and transform it. That's what healing is. So here he was digging a hole in the corner of the garden, preparing to bury the past. The twins played on the grass nearby, chasing butterflies, laughing at nothing. They had no memory of the basin or what it represented. To them, it was just a piece of old metal. But to Marcus, it was everything. It was the moment his life changed. The moment he woke up from the nightmare of his grief and started fighting for his family. He placed the basin in the hole. It gleamed in the sunlight, copper catching fire. Then he filled the hole with soil, dark, rich earth that would nurture new life. Ruth appeared at his side with a small potted plant, a sunflower seedling, Denise's favorite flower. She always said sunflowers turn toward the light, Ruth said. No matter how dark the night, they always find the sun. Marcus took the seedling and planted it directly above the buried basin. He packed the soil around it, watered it gently, and stood back. A new beginning. Rising from the ashes of the old. At 4:15, Jasmine arrived with news. Catherine's appeal was denied. The execution date has been set, October 15th. Marcus felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, just emptiness. Good, he said quietly. Are you going to watch? No, I've seen enough of her. I don't need to watch her die to know she's gone. That's probably healthier. Probably. They stood in silence, watching the sunflower seedling sway in the breeze. What about Derek? Marcus asked. Life without parole? He'll die in prison just like he deserves. And the other families, the victims. They're doing okay, some better than others. The Morrison family started their own support group for survivors of Black Widow killings. They named it after their father. That's good. That's really good. Jasmine touched his arm. You did this, Marcus. You gave them closure. You gave them hope. We did it, all of us. 6 months later, on a crisp fall evening, Marcus hosted a dinner at the mansion, a small gathering, family and close friends only. Ruth had prepared her famous peach cobbler. Angela had brought champagne. Dr. Patterson had brought toys for the twins. Mr. Simmons had brought flowers. And Jasmine had brought news. The foundation received its largest donation yet, she announced over dessert. $5 million, anonymous donor, no strings attached. The table erupted in cheers. Do you know who it was? Angela asked. I have suspicions, but the donor wanted to remain private, so I'm respecting that. Marcus smiled. He knew exactly who it was. He'd written the check himself through a series of holding companies that couldn't be traced. The foundation was his legacy, his gift to Denise's memory, and he would support it with everything he had. At 9:30, after the guests had left and the twins were asleep, Marcus sat on the back porch with Ruth. The sunflower had grown tall over the summer, its bright yellow face turned toward the fading sunset. The copper basin was completely buried now, invisible beneath layers of soil and growth. You've come a long way, Ruth said. From that broken man I saw in the hospital, you've rebuilt yourself. I had help. Everyone needs help. The trick is knowing when to ask for it. She paused. And knowing who to trust. I almost trusted the wrong person. Almost, but you figured it out, eventually. Eventually almost wasn't soon enough. But it was soon enough. That's what matters. Your daughters are alive. You're alive. Catherine is on death row. Justice was served. Marcus looked at the sunflower, at the garden, at the house he'd almost lost. Do you think Denise would forgive me for marrying Catherine, for putting the girls in danger? Ruth was quiet for a long moment. Denise loved you more than anything in this world. She knew you weren't perfect. She knew you made mistakes, and she loved you anyway. She took his hand. She would forgive you, Marcus. The question is whether you can forgive yourself. At 11:15, Marcus tucked his daughters into bed. He kissed their foreheads, adjusted their blankets, and stood watching them sleep. They were perfect, healthy, happy, growing stronger every day. They would never remember Catherine. They would never know how close they'd come to death. They would grow up knowing only love and safety and the protection of a father who would do anything for them. That was his gift to them, a childhood free of fear. Sweet dreams, my beautiful girls, he whispered. Daddy loves you, now and forever. He turned off the light and closed the door. In the hallway, a photograph of Denise smiled down at him. He stopped and touched the frame. "I'm doing my best, baby. Every day I'm doing my best." He could almost hear her voice. "I know you are, and that's all I ever asked." 1 year later, on the anniversary of Catherine's execution, Marcus visited her grave. It was a small marker in a potter's field outside the prison. No flowers, no visitors, no one to mourn a woman who had murdered 6 people and tried to murder 3 more. He stood there for a long time, staring at the simple stone. "I don't know why I came here," he said finally. "Maybe to make sure you're really gone. Maybe to prove to myself that I'm not afraid anymore." The wind rustled through the grass. No other sound. "You almost destroyed my family. You almost killed my daughters. You made me doubt everyone I loved. But you failed. And now you're here alone in the ground, forgotten by everyone." He took a deep breath. "I forgive you, Catherine. Not for your sake. For mine. I forgive you because holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I forgive you because my daughters deserve a father who isn't consumed by hatred. I forgive you because that's what Denise would want." He placed a single sunflower on the grave, a symbol of light, a symbol of hope. "Goodbye, Catherine. May God have mercy on your soul." He turned and walked away. He didn't look back. At 4:30 that afternoon, Marcus returned to the mansion where his family was waiting. The house was filled with laughter. The twins were chasing each other through the living room. Ruth was singing in the kitchen. Angela was on the phone, probably closing another business deal. Jasmine was reviewing foundation reports at the dining table. His family, his life, his future. Marcus walked into the garden and stood before the sunflower that had grown from the buried basin. It was massive now, taller than him, its face turned toward the sun. He thought about everything he'd lost, his first wife, his innocence, his faith in humanity, and he thought about everything he'd gained. Strength, wisdom, a family that would never let him fall. The front door opened. Zoe and Maya came running toward him, their faces bright with joy. "Daddy, Daddy, Ruth made cookies." He scooped them up, one in each arm, and held them tight. "Then let's go eat some cookies." He carried them inside, past the sunflower, past the buried basin, past all the pain and fear and darkness that had once threatened to consume him. Behind him, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange and pink. And ahead of him, through the open door, the house glowed with warmth and light and love. That night, after the cookies were eaten and the twins were asleep and the house was quiet, Marcus sat at his desk and wrote a letter. "To my daughters," he began. "Someday when you're older, someone will tell you about what happened when you were babies, about Catherine, about the danger, about how close we came to losing everything. When that day comes, I want you to know the truth, not the newspaper version, not the TV version, the real truth from your father's own hand." He wrote for hours. He wrote about Denise, about how much she loved them, about how she would have given anything to watch them grow up. He wrote about Catherine, about how he'd been fooled, about the mistakes he'd made, about the lessons he'd learned. He wrote about Ruth, about Angela, about Jasmine, about all the people who had fought to keep them safe. And he wrote about love, about how it was the strongest force in the universe, about how it could survive anything, even death, even betrayal, even the darkest night. "You are my light," he wrote. "You are the reason I fight. You are the best parts of your mother living on in this world. And no matter what happens, no matter where life takes you, know that you are loved, completely, unconditionally, forever." He signed the letter, sealed it in an envelope, and placed it in his safe. Someday his daughters would read it. Someday they would understand, but not today. Today they were children, innocent, happy, free, and that was exactly how it should be. At midnight, Marcus stood at his bedroom window, looking out at the garden. The moonlight fell on the sunflower, making it glow silver in the darkness, from shadow to light, from fear to hope, from brokenness to wholeness. That was his story. That was his family's story. That was the story of everyone who had ever faced the darkness and refused to give in. He thought about all the families the foundation had helped, all the children who were safe because someone had spoken up, all the predators who had been stopped because someone had paid attention. Light doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from people who refuse to let the darkness win. Marcus closed his eyes and made a silent promise. To Denise, to his daughters, to himself. He would spend the rest of his life carrying that light, sharing it with others, making sure that no child ever felt as alone and afraid as Zoe and Maya had been in that cold copper basin. That was his purpose. That was his legacy. That was the meaning of everything he'd survived. And when his time on this earth was finished, he would look back and know that he had done something that mattered at Fives, that he had made a difference, that he had honored the memory of the woman he loved by protecting the children she had given him. The clock struck midnight. A new day was beginning. Marcus Thompson, billionaire survivor, father, and founder of the Denise Thompson Foundation, smiled in the darkness. The nightmare was over. The healing was complete, and the light would never go out. Because in the end, love is stronger than fear, family is stronger than evil, and hope is stronger than anything the darkness can throw at us. That is the truth that Catherine Sinclair never understood. That is the truth that saved Marcus Thompson and his daughters. And that is the truth that will echo through generations to come, a beacon for every family facing their own darkness, a reminder that no matter how deep the night, the dawn always comes. Always.